Good morning students. Today's class we will see about the third year of nursing supplementary examination of October 2019. So there's two short essays. First one is explain the types of validity. Validity is the degree to which a test measures what it is supposed to measure. Validity is the extent to which a concept, conclusion or measurement is well founded and corresponds accurately to the real world. Validity is important because it can help to determine what types of tests to be used and help to make sure researchers and using methods validity trustworthy. So there are types of validity. First one is the face validity. It is the extent to which a measurement method appears on its face to measure the concept of interest. That means how it looks. Most people would expect a self-esteem questionnaire to include items about whether they see themselves as a person of worth and whether they think that they are good qualities. So, a questionnaire that includes this kind of items would have a good face validity. Second is content validity. It is the extent to which a measure covers the concept of interest. For example, if a researcher conceptually defines test anxiety as involving both sympathetic nervous system activation and negative thoughts, and he measures the test anxiety should include items about both nervous feelings and negative thoughts. Or consider that attitudes are usually defined as involving thoughts, feelings, and actions towards something. Third is criterion validity. It is the extent to which people score on measure are correlated with other variables that one would expect them to be correlated with. For example, people's score on new measures of test anxiety should be negatively correlated with their performance on that important school exam. If it were found that people's score were in fact negatively correlated with their exam performance, then it would be a piece of evidence that this score really represents people's test anxiety. When a criterion is measured at the same time as the considered criterion validity is referred to as concurrent validity. However, when the criterion measured at some point in the future, it is referred to as predictive validity because score on measure have predicted for a future outcome. Criteria can also include other measures of the same concept. For example, one would expect new measures of test anxiety or physical risk taking to be positively correlated with existing measures of the same concept. This is known as convergent validity. Then discriminant validity, on the other hand, is the extent to which the score on measure are not correlated measures of variables that are conceptually distinct. For example, self-esteem is a general attitude towards self. It's fairly stable over time. It is not the same as a mood, which is how good or bad but happens to be feeling right now. So people's score on new measures of self-esteem should not be very highly correlated with their moods. Second question is explain quantitative research design. Quantitative research is an inquiry into an identified problem based on testing a theory composed of variables, measuring with numbers, and analyzed by using statistical technique. They are classified into experimental design, that is of true experimental design, quasi-experimental design, or pre-experimental design. Second is non-experimental designs like descriptive design, correlation or ex post factor design, developmental research design, epidemiological design, and survey research design. Quantitative research design is aimed at discovering how many people think, act, or feel a specific way. Quantitative projects involve large sample size concentrating on the quantity of the response as opposed to gaining more focused on emotional insight than the aim of the qualitative research. Second is short note, the scales of measurements. In statistics, the variables of numbers are defined and categorized using different scales of measurements. Each level of measurement is a scale and has a specific property that determines various uses of statistical analysis. They are the four different scales of measurement. Data can be defined as being one of the four scales. They are nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and ratio scale. First one is a nominal scale. A nominal scale is the first level of measurement scale in which numbers serve as tags or labels to classify or identify objects. A nominal scale usually deals with the non-numeric variables or numbers that do not have any value. A nominal scale variable is classified with two or more categories. It is a qualitative. Numbers are used to identify the object. The numbers don't define the object characteristic, they are only permissible aspect of numbers in the nominal scale is counting. For example, what is your gender? M is male, F is female. Hence the variables are tags. The answer of this question should be either M or F. Second is ordinal scale. Ordinal scale is a second level of measurement that records the ordering and ranking of data without establishing degree of variation between them. Ordinal represent order. Ordinal data is known as qualitative data of categorical data. It can be grouped, named, and also ranked. The characteristic include ordinal scale shows the relative ranking of the variables. It identifies and describes the magnitude of a variable. Along with the information provided by nominal scale, ordinal scale gives ranking of these variables. The interval properties are not known. The surveyors can quickly analyze the degree of agreement concerning the identified order of variables. For example, ranking of the score students in the first, second, and third, etc. Rating interest tolerance, evaluating frequency of occurrence, assessing degree of agreement. Third type is interval scale. Interval is a third level of measurement. It is defined as quantitative measurement scale in which difference between two variables is meaningful. In other words, the variables are measured in an exact manner, not in a relative way in which the presence of zero is arbitrary. The characteristic include it is a quantitative as it can be quantified the difference between the values. It allows calculating the mean median of the variables. To understand the difference between the variables, you can subtract the values between the variables. For example, Likert scale, net promoter scales, bipolar matrix table, etc. Ratio scale is the fourth level of measurement, which is qualitative. This type of variable measurement scale. It allows the subject to compare the difference or intervals of ratio scale have unique feature. It possesses character of origin or 0 points. Characteristics include it has an absolute 0 point. It does not have negative numbers because of 0 point is a feature. It offers unique opportunities for statistical analysis. Ratio scale has unique and useful properties. For instance, it allows conversion like kilogram, calories, gram, etc. Example, what is your weight? Less than 55 kg, 55 to 75 kg, 76 to 85 kg, 86 to 95 kg, more than 95 kg. So, there is 0 point. 0 means there is no weight at all. The fourth question is type of hypothesis. Types include simple or complex hypothesis. Simple means a statement which reflects relationship between two variables. Complex means a statement which reflects relationship between between more than two variables. Associate and causal hypothesis. Associate means reflect relationship between variables that occur or exist in natural setting without manipulation. Causal hypothesis predict the cause and effect relationship between two or more dependent and independent variables in experimental or interventional setting where independent variable is manipulated by researcher to examine the effect of dependent variable. Directional or non-directional hypothesis. Directional hypothesis specify not only the existence but also expected direction of the relationship. There is a positive experience between years of teaching experience and job satisfaction. So that positive is a direction. Non-direction means it reflects the relationship between two or more variables, but it does not specify an anticipated direction of nature of relationship, positive or negative. Null or research hypothesis. It is also known as statistical hypothesis. It is used for statistical testing and interpretation of surgery outcomes. It states existence of no relationship between independent and dependent variables. Such hypothesis states existence of relationship between two or more variables. The fifth question is literature review. Review of literature is a summary of all reviews from various research literature related to the current study and carried out by the researcher. It helps to discover what is already known about the research problem and what more has to be done. An organized written presentation of what has been published on a topic by the scholars. It is a definition given by Burns. Account of what has been published by accredited scholars and researchers is the definition given by Taylor. Characteristic of a good quality of review of literature. A good review of literature must be comprehensive, up-to-date, systemic, reproducible, free from bias. It is well written. The form of some of its parts should be clearly searched and selected. Accurate reference should be given in the review. Purpose. It helps to identify what is already known about the problem, build on previous knowledge. Many published research studies contain recommendations for future research, from which we can get idea for new research study. It makes the researcher know what research has already been done in a particular area so as to avoid duplication. Necessary to narrow the problem to be studied. Identify questions as a body of research does not answer. It helps the researcher to acquainted with the relevant theories, strategies, tools, and instruments for conducting research. Helps to understand the different ways of conducting research study. Helps to identify comparative data. So helps to interpretation and discussion of previous study. The sixth question is survey method. Survey method is a technique of gathering data by asking questions to the people who are thought to have desired information. A formal list of questions is preferred. Generally, a non-disclosed approach is used. Advantages include it can provide information about possibilities of undertaking different type of research method, provide data about the present, a high degree of representativeness, easy to get response and information often do not express their true reactions to the question. Disadvantage include it needs a long degree of control of extraneous variables, verbal behavior is quite unreliable and data for people. Differential between independent and dependent variable. Independent variables do not have depend on other variables are known as independent variable. They are controllable. They explain the cause and effect changes in the variable. Independent variables influenced by the researcher. Independent variables are exposure variables that can be used in research. But dependent variables, the dependent variables are dependent variables. They are not controllable. They are explained by the independent variable. Changes in response variables are directly caused by the changes in the independent variable. Dependent variables are outcome of the research. Limitation and delimitation is we already seen in the previous videos. Phenomenology and ethnography. Ethnography is the research process and conduct based on anthropology, identify and explain cultural setting. Participant observations of long fieldwork may include conversation, documents, pictures, memos, etc. Varied and many include grounded theory, symbols organized into domains, generate taxonomy to identify structures in the culture. Philosophy and research approach examines the meaning of human experience, in-depth individual group interviews. They gain sense of world phenomena by rereading transcripts and listening to interviews, identify meaning of tune, transform language, synthesize. Communication of research findings and utilization of research findings. A research project cannot be considered complete until it research effectively communicated to its users or consumers. Therefore, communication of a research finding is one of the essential and final steps of research process. Purpose include promotion of learning, new knowledge among professionals, expansion of base for the evidence-based practice, improving the healthcare outcome by refining the existing body of professional knowledge. Utilization of nursing research. In recent days in nursing, the need for research-based practice is still widely accepted, but unfortunately, many current nursing interventions are based on traditions rather than science. In today's cost and time-conscious healthcare environment, nurses cannot afford to spend time on unnecessary or ineffective procedures at a time. When nurses are asked to take care of more complicated illness and demanding patients, striving for decreased length of stay, the nurse must work smarter and not harder for the actual utilization of nursing research and practice has to be realized. Barriers of utilization include nurses lack time to actively participate in conducting and implementing research, do not understand the importance of research, or healthcare scenario plays little attention to research. Staff nurses cannot read nursing research journals. Research reports are presented to researchers and reports are not reached nurses who can practically use these new ideas. Strategies include the most crucial factor in preceding research utilization and identification of clinically relevant problems and issues. A barrier to research based on practice are multidimensional, so the process to implement multidimensional, so the implement effective strategies to overcome these barriers will require combined effort from nurses to education, research, administration, and clinical practice. as educators, use research findings to support lectures and teaching, incorporate research findings in the clinical assignments, motivate the students to conduct research activities. As researchers, focus on research activity and current clinical problems, disseminate research results as early as possible, present research findings locally, regionally, and nationally, clearly delineate practice implication of the result. Criteria for communicating research include select proper channel for communicating the research, knowing the consumers, developing an effective plan for writing a research report, careful selection of the journal for publication of report, careful review of authors' manuscript guidelines. Draw a histogram using the following data. So here is the histogram. Chi-square test. The chi-square test is a statistical hypothesis test that is valid to perform when stat statistic is chi-square distributed and the null hypothesis, specifically Pearson chi-square test and variant thereof. Pearson chi-square test is used to determine whether there is statistically significant difference between expected frequencies and observed frequencies in one or more categories of the contingency table. The chi-square used for various purposes. Statistical test for association of test of independence is used that in goodness of fit to test the specified population variance. It used as a large sample as well as small sample test can be used even if more than two groups are involved. Standard deviation. Standard deviation is a statistic that measures dispersion of a data set relative to its mean and calculated as the square root of the variance. Standard deviation is calculated as the square root of variance by determining each data point's deviation relative to the mean. If the data points are further from the mean, there is a higher deviation within the data set, thus more spread of the data, higher standard deviation. Calculating standard deviation. The mean value is calculated by adding all data points and dividing by the number of data points. Variance for each point is calculated by subtracting the mean from the value of data point. Each of these resulting values is squared and result sum. The result is then divided by number of data points plus 1. The square root of variance result from the two is then find the standard deviation. This is the formula to calculate the standard deviation. The types of graphs. First one is bar diagram. Different types of commonly used bar diagrams are simple, component, multiple, or percentage. Simple bar diagram, it contains rectangular bars of equal width drawn into common baseline with equal space in between. The length of bars must be proportional to the observations of each category. Here is the example of a bar diagram of a profit of a bank for 5 years. Second is component bar diagram. When different categories of data further subdivided into various components after they presented graphically, a component bar diagram is used. So, example, here is the product shows a quantity 100 kg of wheat, barley, oats produced in total during the years 1991 to 94. So, 91 wheat 34, barley 18, and oats 27. So, total is 79. 92 the same way, 93 and 94. So we can see how we can plot a component diagram. This is a component bar chart for showing the oats, barley and wheat in 91, 92, 93 and 94 respectively. Second is a percentage bar diagram. The components of marks in percentage. In this case, total length of the bars will be the same, that is 100%. As in case of component bar diagram, total length subdivide, that means total strength is A. The class having A having total strength of 65 and strength pass of 36 and B 56, 42. C only 54 students among the only 27 is passed and D total of 50 students in the clear class. So first we calculate percentage of students who are passed. So division A is 55.3 and division B 55. Division B is 38 and division C it is 50% and division D is 46%. So here is 32. So this 55.55%, 38% and 50% and 46. So it shows the number percentage bar diagram. The multiple bar diagram. Two or more set of interrelated data represented can be called as a multiple bar diagram. So here is a bar diagram. So years and 91 imports and exports. So and 91 it shows the The, the dark yellow shows the imports and the light green color shows the exports. So it is known as multiple bar chart. Other graphs are used as histogram, line diagram, frequency polygon, scatter diagram, or dot diagram. Ordinal scale. Ordinal scale is the second level of measurement that records the ranking order of the data without actually establishing degree of variation between them. Ordinal level of measurement is second of the four measurements. Ordinal indicates the order. Ordinal scale data is the quantitative data which are naturally occurring orders and difference between is unknown. It can be named, grouped, and also be ranked. So, for example, how satisfied you with your products? One is totally satisfied, second is satisfied, B is neutral, fourth is dissatisfactory, and fifth is dissatisfied, not totally dissatisfied. So the respondents will choose between these options satisfaction, but answer to how much will remain unanswered. Understanding of various scales helps to statisticians observe so that the use of data analysis techniques can be applied accordingly. Thus, an ordinal scale is used as a comparison parameter to understand whether the variables are greater or less than one another using scoring. The center tendency of ordinal scale is median. Like let's give an example of why the interval between the ordinal variables cannot be concluded. In the scale, the answers options usually portrays totally satisfied to totally dissatisfied. Ordinal scale characteristic include, along with identifying and describing the magnitude, ordinal scale shows relative rank of variables, properties of intervals are not known, measurement of non-numeric characteristics, frequency, satisfaction, happiness. Using the scale, survey makers can analyze degree of agreement among respondents with respect to the identified order of variables. The frequency distribution, a common device for organizing, representing fairly large collection of qualitative data. Frequency, repetition of observation is called frequency. How many times a particular observation is repeated frequency for a value of a group or a class. A class, when you form a group of value, it is known as a class. Class limit, consider a class of 20 to 30, in which 20 is the lower limit and 30 is the upper limit and values included in a particular class. Class boundaries, the same like class limit. Class interval, the difference between the class boundaries is called class interval. Class frequency, number of observations lying in a particular class is known as class frequency. Cumulative frequency is a cumulative of total frequencies is a cumulative frequency. Characteristic of mean. Arithmetic mean is the most widely used measure of locations and shows central value of a data. It is calculated by summing the values and dividing by number of values. The major characteristic of mean are it is to an interval scale, all values are used, it is unique, and sum of deviations vary, mean is 0. Mean is generally used when the distribution of the test is symmetric. It is a ratio of the sum of all values of total number of observations. It is highly affected by the extreme values in a data set or the outliers. Thank you for listening.